Hello, everybody. I'm just trying to get on Instagram as well to see if it's going to let me, but I feel like because of the title, the nature of what I'm talking about, it's controversial. So if you're watching on YouTube, just let me know in the comments if you can hear me properly. And yeah, we'll see how we can get this going. So, for anyone that is joining, thanks so much for tuning in tonight. I'm going to try to make this a regular thing, this Tuesday evening thing. And tonight we're going to be talking about infants and injections, the path of unassisted pregnancy. So, my name's Reem. I go by Vipassana Mama online. I am a mom and a wife, first and foremost. I am also a registered massage therapist in the province of Ontario. I'm an osteopathic manual practitioner student. I'm finishing my last 2 courses this month and will transition into writing my thesis. And I'm going to be focusing my thesis on I'll be receiving the infants whose mothers were receiving treatment in their second and third trimester, and I'll be doing evaluations on the infants to see what kind of lesional patterns they have. And so when I say the word lesion, that doesn't mean, cancer. It just means what's happening within the body. Is there favoritism to one side? Is there a pattern that's being presented? And what can we do with that information when we notice that? So if you have not yet subscribed to my channel, please do so. Please hit the bell in the top right hand corner so when I do go live, you never miss it. Because I'm a mom, sometimes my schedule has to shift and I try to be really flexible with that. And so in those instances, I might go live earlier or later than I once said. I really try to stick with the program, but again, that's the life of mom. And I'm just really excited to dig into this topic because I think now more than ever, with everything that's happening around the world, especially with this, what can I even name this right now? Really interesting to observe how the population has been entirely manipulated, and what we're doing, in a sense, is kind of compromising our health in the name of prevention. And so this is a really interesting thing to play with because I think that what we do as a society in the medical systems that exist is that we take something that, would have otherwise not needed intervention, and in the name of prevention, we intervene. And so these are really important words and concepts to get a grasp of and understand what we're trying to do with that because, the human body itself is perfect. It was designed by a creator far more intelligent than any one of us humans. And in this process of, design and natural intelligence, created so many systems that require everything to be fluctuating in a fluidic nature. And when that circumstance is not present, that's when we experience disease. So you break down the word disease, it really just means dis-ease. It's emotional stagnation. Energy in motion is emotion. And when that becomes stagnant, that creates a lack of movement, a lack of fluidity, a lack of energy that's able to be dispersed through. And through the stagnation is where the illness derives. And so these are philosophical concepts. And when we kind of expand our mind and really consider what are the deeper implications of what's happening, we can get a much more comprehensive understanding. And so I always revert back to trusting the body. And that took me a really long time to understand what that meant and how I could achieve that type of trust. Because I think we have become so codependent on a system that inherently thrives off us being ill and dependent on that system. And so, like what really woke me up, to this path, what woke me up was my mom getting breast cancer. And in the process of her, having breast cancer, and I just remember her doing the chemo and the radiation. And at the time, me not knowing anything about health, not knowing anything about the body, and really feeling like just wanting to be there for her and wanting to support her and really wanting my mom to be alive. And she said to me one day that I feel like I'm just poisoning myself. And the truth of the matter is that she was literally poisoning herself. And so that's what she did, because that's what she felt like she had to do to stay alive. And that's what a lot of people do. And right now, in these like really unusual circumstances, everyone is overflowed with immense amount of information and propaganda. And so I teach a lot on understanding what is propaganda, what is public relations, what is marketing. And the reality of life is that these words all mean the same thing. And so everything that we're being bombarded with is just really drowning us in content that's not even true, not even accurate, not even reliable. And science itself has a big question mark around it now. Like, can we trust science? Like, what is this real science? And what research is reliable and what is observable and reproducible? And so I'm currently embarking on a journey of unassisted pregnancy. And I thought, what better thing to share about than my experience and my previous birth with my daughter, who is now 2.5, at a time where we're being recommended and advised to take injections, at a time where we're told that we'll die without this. And what is the thought process of a person who has done her fair share of research, who cares very passionately about the human race and the fortitude and longevity and vitality of the human race? And what does it mean when we rely on a system outside of ourselves, and how to really hone in on that trust and that surrender, and to understand what it is about us, about our body, that is designed so perfectly. So yeah, today is injections and infants, and what does it mean to walk a path of unassisted pregnancy. So my first birth, I knew I wanted to do like a holistic style of birthing. So I did that in the best capacity that I knew at the time, which was to not go to as many doctor's appointments as I really wanted to, and not going to as many doctor's appointments, not getting too many ultrasounds early on. And later I've now taken the Radical Birthkeeper School with the Free Birth Society with Emily Saldea and Yolanda Norris Clark, and really have unpacked the truth about ultrasounds and how dangerous they are to our infants, and just really considering the implications of putting this like high intensity sound to the child, and what that causes actually is, there's concerns of miscarriage, there's concerns of birth defects, and these are the things that we're not told about in society, which is now dependent on this prenatal structure, this prenatal care. And that's the beginning of our introduction into the medical system that needs you to be dependent, needs you to be, so deeply enmeshed and intertwined that you almost feel like you can't birth alone. And this is just the reality of the nature of society today. And so there is a huge population that is waking up to this, that's waking up to the truth about birth, to the truth about that it's not a medicalized event, that it's not an emergency, and that in fact we can and have for centuries prior to this, because the truth of the matter is that people have been being born all of these years. This didn't just start happening. And so all of these interventions that have now occurred have happened within the past 150 years, really. And what was actually going on before that? And when we talk about injections, very similarly, a lot of these were developed in the recent century and heightened, and now to the point where some infants are receiving anywhere upwards of 70 injections. And what we're not being told is that these are all interventions. They are said to be done in the name of prevention. And what are the implications of doing this? So we have to really understand that there is always going to be a consequence for any action. Okay? So if I do X, then Y will happen. If I do A, then B will happen. And so I think society has become so inverted and confused that we almost think that consequence has like a strictly negative association. And I think that's a very flawed way of thinking about it, because truly it just means that there's a cause and effect, or sometimes a correlation, sometimes a causation, but ultimately you have to understand that there will be consequences to whatever it is that you choose. And you have to weigh within yourself, well, what would the consequences be if I chose to go ahead with this? And what if I chose to not go ahead with this? And what am I going to do with that information? And taking full radical responsibility for that, for your choice, for your decision, and for the consequence that is coming. And so this path of unassisted pregnancy, is me choosing to not take a pregnancy test, which is something that I did do in the first pregnancy that I had. And I'm choosing to not take a pregnancy test this time because ultimately, why do I need to rely on a test outside of myself to tell me if I'm pregnant? What kind of distortion has had to happen in society where I can't even trust my own body to tell me if I'm pregnant or not? That's a really interesting thing to unpack and like observe about yourself, because once upon a time, I believe that we were so in tune with society, with the nature and rhythms of life, with like the cyclical way of the seasons and the sun and the moon. And we were able to tap into this energy within us. And you would intuitively know what's happening within you. And it's been something that I've really been working on, because for many years I was numbing out. I was drinking too much and partying too much and staying up all night and sleeping in the mornings, or sometimes not even sleeping at all, and really ruining the mechanism that exists within my body, the internal clock, the internal awareness, and my ability to just like be in touch with myself. And it wasn't until I was introduced to osteopathy that my life started to shift. And I eventually quit drinking altogether, because my osteopath looked at me and he said, no treatment I ever do is going to hold within your body, because you continue to do this perpetual damage to yourself. And these were truths that I had to wake up to, because we get really comfortable in society. We want to believe subjective truths and ignore this reality that there is an ultimate truth, and And the ultimate truth is that I really want to take care of myself. And for me to be in touch with myself, I need to take care of the vessel that I'm being gifted, that's on loan to me, and treat it with reverence and respect and connect to it. And stop seeking consult from any expert outside of myself, because I am the expert of my body. And this is the study of the self in connection with the divine, in understanding that this is a very precious vehicle that is helping you to progress through life, and that you can either work with it as an ally or make it your enemy, and muffle every signal that it sends to you. I wrote a post the other day saying, your pain is not the problem, because truly your pain isn't the problem. It's your perception of the pain that's the problem. Your pain is your body's signal letting you know that ultimately there's something going on here and you should explore this. And without having that pain, you would never know that something was going on. But your body is intelligently and intricately designed to let you know, hey, pay attention here. I'm not doing so well. And you could really do something to prevent this from happening or help to alleviate this, because I will continue to compensate to keep you alive, to keep you standing upright as much as I can. And that is a blessing. Pain is a blessing. Pain is a sign. It's a teacher, and it's an indication. And sometimes it worsens, it gets louder, it gets more aggressive, and then it goes silent because you've been ignoring it for too long. So a dear friend of mine uses this example of the feather, the brick, and the Mack truck. And the idea is that each time the sign gets a little bit heavier and a little bit not so nice. Like a feather is really gentle. It's like, hey, pay attention. And a brick hits you a little bit harder, but the Mack truck, you can't miss it. And if you miss it, you're probably going to get ejected out of this reality. And I think that is like such an interesting metaphor, because the truth is that if you practice listening to the feather, then you can catch these signs early on and prevent the really terrible things from happening. But if you don't, then you're going to spend your life silencing all of these signals coming to you, and you're going to suffer later, and you're going to suffer much worse, and it's going to be aggravating and painful and really exhausting. So these are this is some of the work that I do in one-on-one coaching with my clients. I also run 2 programs. One is called Pelvic Redemption and the other one is Divine Union. And we do a lot of unpacking of the programming that exists within society that keeps us in these loops of pain, in these loops of trauma. And it's a gift. It's a gift to have eyes to see and ears to hear this information, and to be able to do something with it, to be able to change the pattern so you're not stuck in a loop, because that is also an addiction. You know, we're not just addicted to drugs and alcohol. We're not just addicted to attention. We're addicted to being in that pain loop, being in that trauma loop. And we will actually create these scenarios rather than remove ourselves from them. So yeah, it's fun stuff. So this whole idea of my unassisted pregnancy is me saying, I am really going to step into full autonomy, full body sovereignty, full radical responsibility. I am not going to trust anyone outside of me to tell me what's happening internally. And to be frankly honest with you, since my daughter was 11 months, I've been experiencing a serious, immense pain in my left abdomen. And being an osteopathic student, I know all the good osteopaths. So I've been getting a lot of treatment, and I've gotten treatment that's helped, but it wasn't until yesterday that I had a treatment that really helped to transform and open up my body. And it's because I've honestly been listening so intently to it and trying to pay attention to where are all these signs? Where is this messaging coming from? Because if I pay attention, I can pick up all the pieces, because being an osteopath is being a detective, because the body never lies. All of the answers are always there. You don't need to look at, like a book and I mean, obviously you need to know like where structures are, and like knowing the anatomy empowers you to understand the physiology, but like you can ask the body and it's not going to lie to you. Whereas you ask an individual like, oh, where is your pain and what are you feeling? And they will lie to you, or they will forget things. So maybe not intentionally lying to you, but they'll think they're telling you the truth. And in reality, they're actually just forgetting this and forgetting that. And I can't tell you how many times I've been with a client and then halfway through, like we finished the interview, the health history, and we're in treatment. And by then they're like, oh yeah, and this thing happened. Oh yeah, and then this thing happened. Oh, I forgot to tell you about this. And all of these things help to piece the puzzle together, because when you're born, and this is really important, when you're born, imagine yourself being born at 100% capacity. Okay? So imagine you have a traumatic birth, or something happens, or early on in life, like you have a fall, and all of these things, these incidents, deplete your full tank of gas. And as they deplete your tank of gas, what ends up happening is you go to like a lower, like now you're at 98%, then you're at 84%, then you're at 75%. And you can't really regain some of that. What you can do is you can try to restore, but once you hit certain levels, there's no getting back to 100%. It's just really impossible. And so osteopathy is doing its best to help bring balance back to the body so the body can normalize itself. So I never consider myself the healer, even though I'm on a path of healing myself and helping others to access that same type of healing. But you ultimately heal yourself always. And you have to have the desire to do that. So if you came to see me to get a treatment and you don't believe in it, you're not going to receive the healing in the same way. And that's how we need to start thinking about our infants. Our infants, we want them to enter the world at 100% capacity. And that's why like freedom begins with birth is so important and necessary, because the reality of it is that if they're born into a traumatic, stressful situation, that's going to influence them for the rest of their life. That's going to be part of the innate programming within them. And that could be, keeping them at a lower capacity than had they not had that experience. So what if birth, like I said, was not a medicalized event, which it's not? What if it's not an emergency and it's actually an ecstatic, beautiful, compassionate, deepening and expansive experience? And what if every mother could tap into that energy? What would that be like? And what kind of children would be birthed? And what would that mean for the future of the human race? That would be huge. Like, think about having all the children born at 100% capacity. And going into life with like their best foot forward. And so this idea of now injections comes up, because now we're talking about within moments, not even days, moments of being born, we're putting like shots in the feet, drops in the eyes, sometimes the mouth. And parents are not doing their research. They are not doing their due diligence and understanding what is it that we're engaging in. Mind you, people aren't telling you the reality that infants' digestive systems, they are not fully formed until the age of 2. So anything that you're putting into their body that isn't, their direct source of food, their body cannot metabolize properly. So that gets stored within their liver, within their cells, within their brain. 2 years it takes for the digestive system to be fully formed. So even if you believe in injecting your child as a way of prevention from certain diseases, your infant cannot process that until the age of 2. Now, 100 years ago, or less, let's say our parents' lifetime, which let's say 60, 40, 50 years ago, even 30, infants were receiving maybe 1 to 12 injections. And like I said, now it's upwards of 70. Talking about the one that's currently being pressured around society, that hasn't even been out long enough to be tested. So we are the trials. That's you're watching the trials as we speak. And so this level of discernment, this awareness, this understanding, and ultimately, if you don't have this information, if you don't have this knowledge, the responsibility always will fall back on you. Because you can shout and scream from the mountaintops, well, I didn't know. And it's still only your responsibility to try and learn what you don't know. And there are tons of people out there who are willing to share real information, real science, real backed information. And this is a real beautiful moment, because had it not been for these events of the past year, a lot of people would not have woken up to things that they were previously asleep to. And this is just a real blessing in disguise in many ways. Very painful and sad as well. And I'm sure many people have suffered and watched loved ones suffer, and probably continue to suffer, more so on a cognitive, emotional level than anything, because people really need people. We need one another. We need, just to be together and to hold one another and to have touch and compassion and love. We are designed for that. We are mammalian creatures. And so, these are really important things to consider, and to really reflect on what is actually happening, and why is it being so pressured? Why is it happening on such a quick timeline? And to really just take a moment and slow down and check in with your body and ask yourself to, connect with yourself, to connect to yourself in a way that you have not done so, maybe ever, or maybe in a long time, and to see what is really present for you. This is really just an opportunity for you to reflect and to begin to critically think, in case you have not taken that foot forward yet, and to really explore, what if the human body was designed so perfectly, more perfect than any human could design it itself. Why is it that we need something externally to support our system so early on? Does that not create some sort of reaction within the body? What are the implications of that? What are the consequences of that, both short-term and long-term? When we talk about an autoimmune response, that happens because the body senses a foreign invader within us. And because of that, invader begins to attack to ensure that the body's going to be kept safe. Because what you have to really understand is that your body is literally doing everything it can to keep you alive, to keep you healthy. Your body works as a functional unit. And that is one of the key tenets of osteopathy, that all parts are working together to, keep everything moving and flowing. And it's all about blood. It's all about circulation. It's all about fluid. So like I said in the beginning, when we have stagnation, that is what is the beginning of the disease. And so when we pay attention to those signs, we can catch them much earlier on rather than waiting until there's a serious, noticeable, observable problem. So what I was talking about, that pain in my left abdomen, I'd been paying attention to it since it first showed up. And I had different structures addressed. I had my kidney addressed. I had my stomach addressed. I had parts of the colon addressed. And it's like, it just wasn't releasing. And it felt so deep and so dull and achy and totally visceral. Like I was very sure it was visceral. For a while, I even considered it was my spleen. And I was like, why can't I resolve this? And so rather than approaching that pain as like my enemy, I started to invite it in and say, what are you here to teach me? What are you here to show me? And in the process, I began to learn what was actually manifesting. And so, like I said, I wanted to just share the conclusion to that story was yesterday I received a treatment. I had just completed my obstetrics, gynecology, and bladder course. And I was, having this treatment from the teacher who's been teaching the course for over 20 years. And she was just following the tension within my body. And I could feel it deep within my pelvic floor. I could feel it, even into my chest, but I could never really articulate it much more than what I'm sharing with you right now. And what she discovered was that there was a line of tension between these different structures, between my heart, between the colic angle, which is the angle of the colon as it changes from the transverse to the descending colon, and then into my pelvic floor, which was almost pulling at my rectum. And through this line of tension, it was creating this deep visceral pain for me that I could not get rid of for almost a year and a half. And she gave me like such a beautiful treatment. And for the first day in a year and a half, I have relief. And I am not even worried if it comes back, because I know that if I just listen to my body and I listen to these signals that are always happening, there is a dialogue. There is a dialogue between your body, between the structures within the body, between your brain and the structures, and between you, who inhabits your body. And your children, they have that too. And when we take that step to intervene before necessary, what do you do to the process of the dialogue? And I want to leave you with this thought tonight. So to really consider that. And I want to thank you for joining me. Again, my name's Reem and I go by Vipassana Mama. If you guys have any questions, please leave them in the comments. I would love to answer anything that you have about this. If you have not subscribed yet, please do. Please click the bell, because I'm going to be doing more lives like this in the future and sharing some of the knowledge that I have. It's not a lot, but it's something. And maybe it can give you some insight on something that you're going through in life and give you some perspective. If you have not signed up for my newsletter, please join, because I have an amazing guide to healing oral health holistically. And there's a lot of really great goodies that I just give out to my newsletter list. That's the best way to be in contact with me. And I think more than anything, right now is such a great time to really reflect on what's happening within us, within our body, and to really inquire what kind of trust you hold within yourself. Because ultimately this all boils down it comes back to trust. Like, if you live in fear, then ultimately you don't trust. You don't trust yourself. You don't trust God. You don't trust your body. You don't trust the systems that are in place to help you. That's the truth. That's at the bare bones of it. And we really have to take a moment and reflect on that and learn, what does trust look like? And how can I learn to trust if I don't trust in this moment? Because your body is designed in perfection. And nothing that anyone can do, is going to keep you from dying. You're here temporarily. And so don't be so afraid of death that you forget to live. And allow yourself to really to step into that dialogue, to step into that communication, and to really consider, if I were to inject an infant, what kind of a timeline would I need to feel comfortable? Do I need to intervene? At what point do I need to intervene? Why would I need to intervene? What are the consequences? And I'm going to be sharing more about this unassisted pregnancy. So, like I said, no pregnancy test, no ultrasounds, no intervention. You can call me a non-interventionist. It's going to be a really fun journey. And I just can't wait to share more of you with it as I move along. So, sending you all much love and take care.